is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's flat. He throws. It is.
May 12th, 1975, and Bill, who is on the cover of SI from 50 years ago?
From 50 years ago, it is Foolish Pleasure, is it not? The great horse.
That's right.
Horse. Yeah.
Foolish Pleasure wins the Derby. Jacinto Vasquez rides him to the win, and the Hall of Fame jockey will join us in a bit to talk about that ride he took at Churchill Downs in May of 75. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Past Star Prime podcast. Got Bill and Mark here, and got an easy one for you both, okay? The Derby is a bucket list item for most sports fans, many sports fans. My cousin and her husband went to it this year on a lark. Is that one for you guys? Would you put on your list, or what would be your top bucket list thing to do? Sports.
Yeah.
Mine would be, I think, one of the like Daytona or Indy 500 because it's just loud and fun and the crowds are crazy. I think one of those two would be on bucket list.
Yeah.
I think Super Bowl. I've never been to Super Bowl.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, Super Bowl's definitely
Masters. I thought about, but it's
Masters.
If you want to get a good spot at one hole, I don't know if I want to walk the course or just spend one time at one hole to see the great golfers go by.
Wimbledon.
Yeah. That's true too.
Yeah,
like the Wimbledon finals.
Back in the day, it's not as much anymore because I don't follow it, but like a night match at the U.S. Open when the crowd's just totally into it, that looks like a blast.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
I would probably say, when you're talking Derby, Indy 500, Super Bowl, the Masters, those are like one-time event type things. I would think that I would be more inclined to just like go to like a Florida, Tennessee, SEC football game.
Oh
yeah, or Auburn, Alabama.
Or go to LSU.
Like that.
LSU.
Yeah. Something like that.
That's a good point. That'd be really fun.
It's not necessarily the penultimate championship, but it's just like a flavor of Americana.
Yeah. And great barbecue.
That would be pretty cool. All right, let's get on to it. The scorecard. Mark, what do you got?
Well, this is the bureaucracy in action award, where the AAU and NCAA just do things for just stupid reasons. So, for instance, AAU decided that Dwight Stone's, the world record high jump of 7.5 1/4 MSG, would not be approved because Stones had not taken out an AAU membership card that season. Or that the NCAA suspended 2 Cornhusker players from Nebraska's opening game for having them go to the Sugar Bowl, not to play. They just sat on the bench in uniform. They had transferred, but they weren't eligible to play, and they just sat on the bench. But they said, no, you're flaunting. You can't play in the first game. Just stupid things.
For our podcast, we have to take out an AARP card.
Yes.
I still don't have AARP, so.
Billy.
Okay. This one we all will relate to, especially Mark. But there's a man in Massachusetts. He swims 250 miles a year in a lonely pond in the pine woods near Truro on Massachusetts Cape Cod. Scott, you may have been there once or twice. I don't know.
Yes.
The pond is about 1.25 miles in circumference, and the man, observed only by his dog, plows around its edge naked and content in his isolation. Now, nude sunbathing has been quietly tolerated on Cape Cod for many years, but its increasing popularity in the summer on Free Beach led to people say this has to stop. So to try to stop the a nearly daily average of 500 to 600 naked people at the Free Beach and 1,200 on August 25th of 1975 or 1974, they've decided to fine the people that want to be naked. It's $200 and possibly 6 months in jail. Mark, back to you.
Well, I was going to say it was in Cape Cod. It's Twigs. Scott, have
Yeah,
you?
you're right. Is it?
I just want to know. Can you verify?
I can verify, and I thought that was Mark that I saw.
Yes.
With
But
an
if you guys,
an ice cream cone in his hand, and that was basically it.
What did that person have six-pack abs and just rip one
no,
muscle?
I was gonna say that. Have you guys ever been to a nude beach?
By
I
mistake,
have. Well, I've been to
yes.
a topless beach.
Well, in St. Thomas, there's this teeny little beach off Megan's Bay. And one day, Tina and I got caught in a riptide, and it kept pushing us closer and closer. People that land those beaches, they're not the people you see in Cosmopolitan or anything like that. I mean, I jumped out of the boat, tried to push us away. It was just terrible.
Yeah. Surprisingly, there's a topless beach in out on Long Island in New York.
Really?
Same thing. Amanda and I were walking. We're like, down by the water, not quite in the water, but walking. And I look like about 300 or 400 yards away, and I'm like, I can't be, but it looks like those people are naked. And then we get like a couple hundred yards, and I'm like, oh, turn around, Jesus. This is not good.
No, I was in the south of France, and that's very common
Yes,
practice.
yes. At least then you're expecting
Yes.
it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
there was once running down the beach in Megan's Bay, and I run hard on the beach. It's about a mile long, and I come up and there's a girl sunbathing topless on the beach. If there's a perfection in woman, she was it. I literally almost came to it. I mean, I stopped running as hard.
yeah,
Oh, there are some people that know how to
There's
do
so
it
many
correctly.
play on words there. I'm not even going
I
down
know,
there.
yeah.
I know.
I got one. An astonishing feat has come to light. Sunday, April 13th at Shea Stadium, Willie Horton of the Tigers comes to bat at the top of the seventh, pops one foul to the right of home plate. Tim Kelly, 13 of Harrison, New York, brought his glove, catches the ball. Bottom half of the same inning, the Yankees' Walt Williams foul tipped one into the same area of the stands. Tim Kelly, 13, caught that one as well. Everybody gave me a big hand after I caught the first one, but I got a lot of looks and a few boos after I held up both balls. Only in New York would they boo a 13, maybe Philly as well, where they boo a kid for catching two foul balls. But I want to ask you guys ever gotten a baseball at a game?
No,
I'm
one
close,
bounced
but no.
near me, but never touched it or got near it. Not close enough to get it.
So I think I've told you guys this, that, back in the day when I went to A's games, I'd go when there were 4,000 people tops. There'd be some times where it was less. And so they would cordon off where you couldn't sit,
Yeah.
so that they wouldn't have to have ushers all throughout the stadium. You couldn't buy a seat out in left field. So they would, make you all sit kind of together. So any foul ball that was hit down there was just like fair game. So me and my buddy would get to first of all, we'd get there as the gates got opened up, and this A's team was, so think about that. And then there were like 50 people in the stand. So we got to know your Mickey Klutzes and Matt Keogh and Mario Guerrero and all these A's players that were not the greatest. And they would toss us balls before the game all the time. Then we'd get a couple of balls during batting practice, and then the game would start. Anyway, long story short, one time my buddy Victor got 13 baseballs
Oh, wow.
in one game. And the only home run ball I ever caught was by Larry Herndon. I caught a Jeff Burrows home run in batting practice.
Did you really?
Yeah.
God, I've never come close. I mean, spring training.
Yeah, spring training is a great time for that
Yes.
kind of stuff because crowds are smaller. They said it, Mark.
They said it, and they surely did. Pete Rose was asked how marriages affected Johnny Bench, said he's hitting about 240.
Yeah, Marriage and Johnny Bench didn't go too well.
No.
Send her to the bench.
Bill.
Jim
Bencher.
Schoenfeld, he's 22 years old. He's a Buffalo Sabres defenseman. Talking about Montreal's Henri Richard, who's 39. He really ought to dye his hair. It's embarrassing to find yourself tangling with a gray-haired man. But it goes on with Schoenfeld. If you can remember, if you watch hockey, 14 years later, New Jersey's head coach, Jim Schoenfeld, went after referee Don Koharski after their playoff loss versus the Bruins, calling him a fat pig and telling him to go eat another donut.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Go eat a donut.
Go eat a donut, eh? Yeah,
exactly. You fat pig.
That's funny. I remember that now.
Yep.
Wow. All right. Our cover story. What a pleasure. The 101st running of the Roses. 15 horses in the field, not quite as crowded as the year prior when there were 23. In the first 11 races for Foolish Pleasure, he had won 10 of them, yet he had many critics coming into this race. They didn't think he could handle the extra furlong. The only two horses ever to finish ahead of Pleasure were in this race, Prince Thou Art and Sylvan Place, who finished 6th and 9th respectively, trained and ridden by Hall of Famers Leroy Jolly and Jacinto Vasquez. Pleasure went off as the 2-1 favorite, crossed the finish line first, cementing his place in thoroughbred racing history. Mark, not the fastest time ever, but we're just 2 years removed from the fastest Derby time ever, and everything around that time was being compared to
Secretariat.
Yeah,
I mean, Foolish Pleasure 1 and 2. It's really funny. It says 202, and if you went to a non-horse racing fan, hey, Foolish Pleasure 1 and 202, they'd go, it took 2 hours to do that race? Really? Which is really amazing. So he ran it in 202. To think the Kentucky Derby, everyone is there 5-6 hours before the event, the mint juleps, the style, the fashion, and you're watching a 2-minute race.
Yeah.
Now, there are other races, the Kentucky Derby is not the only race that day.
Right.
But it's the main race.
Yeah.
But still, it's a 2-minute event. Anyway, Secretariat did it like in 1 minute 59 and like 2/5 or whatever. And that may not seem like a lot, but in horse racing, that's a lot. And
if you think of a horse crosses the line, and usually there's another horse. I mean, it's not by a nose, but they're right behind him or whatever. But if you think 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, I mean, that is, Secretariat, think about this. He wasn't even being pushed. There was no one near him.
No.
Right. But again, it's all about the win. If you're a baseball team and you win 88 games that season, like the Dodgers in 1988 or whatever it is, but you win the World Series, you're just as good. You're still the champions, a team that won 105 games during the regular season. It's all about winning the event, who you're competing against.
Yeah, and the opposite holds true. If you win 109 games and don't win the World Series, you're an afterthought.
But I also think a lot of teams now are starting to realize that, and maybe not emphasizing getting into the playoffs, not always trying to win the 100 games, because it's where the playoffs where you make your fame.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's not quite as much in baseball, or certainly in the NBA and the NHL.
Yes.
The veteran teams are kind of like, I don't care if we have home ice.
Yes.
We just got to get in and be healthy, and then we'll see what happens. But
with the Kings was it 2014? They finished 8th and won the Stanley Cup.
Right.
So it didn't matter where you play. If you're good, you're good.
Yep. Bill, coming down the stretch, track announcer Chick Anderson had quite a gaffe.
Boy, that's quite a gaffe. They're coming down. Here we go. Prince Thou Art Thou has taken the lead by length. That's what he called. That was Chick Anderson's call. It was wrong, as Foolish Pleasure was in front. But you know what? Didn't bother Jacinto Vasquez, the jockey for Foolish Pleasure, who said, I figure the wire's getting close. Let him call me, Vasquez said later. I think to myself, he's going to have a Z-Jet engine to catch me.
Yeah, all I kept thinking about is Jacinto, right? All he can basically see is in front of him and maybe
Yeah.
a little bit to the side. And he hears the announcer say, there's a horse in front of him. And he must be thinking, what the hell's he talking about? And he did win the Kentucky Derby, and he won it again in 1980 aboard Genuine Risk, only the second of three fillies ever to win the most famous race in horse racing, and the first in 65 years. And it was all said and done, Jacinto was in the winner's circle over 5,000 times, a Hall of Fame rider who was on a Hall of Fame horse in May of 1975, and he joins us now on the Past Our Prime podcast. Jacinto, it's been 50 years since you and Foolish Pleasure won the Derby. Can you still remember what it was like when you crossed the finish line?
Well, it was my first Derby, and there was a thrill. I had a lot of confidence in that horse and going in a race, so and everything. I rode it the way I planned it, and everything came perfect. So I never had any trouble.
Foolish Pleasure comes into the Derby having lost just once in 11 races, yet some still didn't think much of him. This was a great horse, though, wasn't he?
He was a good horse. He had a lot of problems. He lost the frogs, and I don't know if you guys understand what a frog means. The bottom of the foot. They lost the frogs in the Florida Derby, and after that, and fixing up the feet, the front feet, and Leroy did a hell of a job to keep that horse going. And he went the Wood Memorial, and that race was really too. It was hard for him because he couldn't really stand himself like he should. But when he got to the Derby, they got the problem he had, and he ran the biggest race of his life.
When did you know that you had a good shot at winning this race?
Going in a race. You can't predict what could happen in a race. You only have to plan what you want to do, and if you get in trouble, you have to change your plans and things like that. But I never had any problem. He broke well, and I sat way back over there, and when I called him around the 3.5 pole, I went inside because I don't want to go around 4 or 5 horses or 7 horses. So I said, well, if I can get through, I will win, because I had plenty of horses when I got to the 3/8 pole. So everything worked out. I only had to go around 2 horses in a stretch.
What do you remember at the end of that Kentucky Derby with Avatar and Diablo bumping into each other? What did you see, and how did you obviously not get involved in that?
Well, I was right behind them when I turned for home, and I just made sure that I got him out, and that I was clear, and I don't want to cause me any problem with them. So
did you look over at them and think, okay, now it's my time? Because they were up by the rail, they bump, you go right by them.
Yes, sir. I went inside another horse that was laying third off of him, off of those two. So I went inside that horse, and then I angled to the outside. I was outside those 2 horses, and my horse really took off and really finished very well.
What does it take to be a successful jockey? I mean, some people think you're just sitting on the saddle the whole time. You're not. Your butt is never in the saddle. It's a physically grinding and mental achievement to accomplish.
What it take it to be a good jockey is ride good horses.
Yes, that's like good coaches. Good players make good coaches, right?
Yeah, well, so good coaches make a good team, make a good coach look good. Same thing with the rider. You ride good horses, sooner or later you get a reputation that you're a good rider. But the thing is, good horses make you a good rider. You got to ride good horses to be a good rider, and you can learn from riding good horses. Can't learn in anything riding bad horses.
So what did you learn riding Foolish Pleasure?
Well, I rode Foolish Pleasure the first time I rode him in Mama's Park in Sapling. and he came out of the gate and stumbled right out of the gate, and I don't know, I picked it up, and I was dead last around the backside, going in the backside. So I got inside and I went around it. When I came to the stretch, I went around 3 horses, and there was a horse way in front of me. And when I asked him really to run, he ran, and I beat that horse by a length almost. And that day I find out that a Foolish Pleasure was a good horse.
Talk to me, Jacinto. You're coming down the stretch, and the track announcer, Chick Anderson, he gets the horses mixed up, and he starts saying,
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it was, I was laughing because I heard somebody was in front of me, and I don't see anybody in front of me when I passed those 2 horses. You know, then I was looking outside, and I don't see anybody in front of me, and he was calling another horse at the time.
Yeah, you said, you were quoted in the Sports Illustrated article, if Prince Thou Art is rushing that fast on the outside, he better hurry up, because that wire is in front of me right now, and I'm about to be the winner of this Derby.
Yes.
Later in 75, you actually are involved with one of the greatest match races of all time. Foolish Pleasure, who had only lost 1 race at this point, goes up against the great filly Ruffian. How great was Ruffian?
Never can tell. I never know. She was a horse that had gears, and nobody had gears like her. I worked a lot of good horses, and I rode a lot of good horses, and she was one of the most amazing horses I ever rode in my life.
Wow. Yeah, like you said, you rode Forgo, you rode Foolish Pleasure, but Ruffian, you would say, was the most amazing one of them all?
Yeah, well, I rode Mr. Perspective and a few other good horses. But she never got to prove what she really was, because after she won the Triple Crown for fillies, then they come up with a match race, and you don't get nothing out of prove anything out of a match race. You only do a match race is kill 2 good horses. That's all it is.
Wow.
You know, Foolish Pleasure after the match race, he did well because he only ran with that filly a quarter of a mile.
Right.
And not even a quarter. My filly broke down. If we had to run the whole mile and a quarter, could have been a different story for this horse.
You actually got off of Foolish Pleasure to ride Ruffian, which tells you what you thought of Ruffian, because Foolish Pleasure's just won the Derby, and you decided to do that. Tell our listeners what happened in that race to your prized filly.
Well, a lot of people making excuses and everything. The only thing I was pushing Foolish Pleasure out, trying to keep him out, you know, to keep him up. I don't want him to crowd me on top of the fence or nothing. So I'm trying to keep him out. And my intention was to have him way outside me, out in the middle of the racetrack when I get to the turn, and keep him there till I get to the middle of the turn and leave it there, and then I can drop over. And that was my intentions. But my filly broke down a quarter mile after that. They're out of the gate. I was tough, and it was tough to me to keep him up because she broke her leg, and then she kept running in that leg. You know, she broke she snapped the fascia, the foot between the foot and the ankle. And when she had her pull up, she was above the ankle, and the bone was shattered. There was pieces of bone, and that's what happened.
How long did it take you to get over that? Because watching you off the horse, obviously, you know, she still wants to go and you're trying to, you know, stop her. How tough and how long did it take you to get over what you saw and what you were part of?
It took me a quarter of a mile to pull him up. Took me almost a quarter of a mile to pull him up. I tried to keep him in her feet, you know, in his right and a good foot. You know, every time she trying to change to the right, but I trying to keep him to the left because like this, the long she keep running in the left foot to stand the whole way, I can keep him up. And I'd keep him up till I pull him up.
How true is it that they talked about that part of the reason that maybe Ruffian got hurt is that she bumped off the inside of the paddock coming out? Is that true? Or what can you say?
No. It's nothing happened. Listen, I don't gonna blame anybody, but match race is a match race. When you ride a match race, you got to go on, and you got to do what is best to try to win the race. You know, if you always in full display, you're gonna try to do the same thing as Browley was doing to me, crowding me to keep me close to the fence and top of the fence, and I was inside. I don't gonna let him to keep me on top of the fence, and I had enough force to keep him out. So there was a fight. So we were fighting to maintain a position. He's trying to push me in, and I'm trying to push him out. And probably some of the way that foolish pleasure, that's what it cost breaking her leg. But there was no pitches or nothing. There was strictly an accident, part of the game.
Did you ever do a match race after that, or because of that experience, you said, I'm not going to do a match race again?
They don't been any match race after that, you know. The press got me after that, and I was against the match race, but Denny Phipps was the chairman of the board of the racetrack at that time, and he thought they're going to bring in crowd. And he got mad at me because I said to him, I said, why you want a match race? This filly going to pull the clubhouse in the grandstand anytime she show up to run. So why you don't need no match race. I was riding both horses. I was in the middle, but I spoke my piece, and I was wrong anyhow. But the thing come up, turned out the wrong thing anyhow for them, because they don't been another match race with thoroughbreds. You know, you can't run a thoroughbred a mile and a quarter in full speed. No way. Nobody can let. All the match races that I saw before, those horses never was any good after they run a match race. Convenient, Chris Ever, they never was any good after they run the match race. Foolish Pleasure was lucky. He only run a quarter of a mile.
Right. He
with a pressure on, real pressure on. Yeah.
Just how dominant was Ruffian? In 10 races leading up to the match race, she was in the lead at every point in every race she ran, winning all 10 of them and set new stakes records in each of the 8 stakes races she won. She was a machine, and yet in the match race, the machine breaks down. She breaks her leg. They have surgery for her. It doesn't go well, and they have to euthanize her. How attached, Jacinto, do you get to these horses? And when something like that happens, what kind of emotional toll does it take on you?
Well, you know, it's a shame when a horse come up with an accident like that and break a leg or have a fraction. An animal like a thoroughbred is, they exercise every day. And when they operate those horses and they trying to keep them alive, they lose all of muscles and everything. And sooner or later, they found themselves. Either way, they end up being with ligament. So you have to put them down anyhow. You know what happened to Barbaro? You know that Mr. Jenny did the right thing when she, after the operation, she threw a fit and he said, put her down, because sooner or later, she don't gonna live with that leg like that.
Right.
Because she gonna stand in one leg and 3 legs for 3-4 months. As soon as she loses the condition, she gonna found, and they're gonna have to destroy it because they lose the foot. When a horse found, the top of the foot, the outside, they deteriorate from the bone. And you got to destroy an animal like that. But when an animal get hurt like that, you might as well put him down, because you can't save him.
That must be tough, though. You must get attached to these horses.
You got to face the facts. Those things happen all the time. I had a lot of horses break down with me, good horses and cheap horses, and they break down the blind. But in our business, every horse, good or bad horse, you get attached to all of it, and you feel sorry for the things that happen, but that's part of the game.
On a brighter side, not only do you win the Kentucky Derby with Foolish Pleasure, but 5 years after that, Genuine Risk, you won the Kentucky Derby. What kind of horse was Genuine Risk?
Oh, Genuine Risk was a very good filly. She run against colts all the time, and she performed right. And then she had a little bit knee problem after the pregnancy, and she run in the Belmont. She run a good race, but she never really run after that good because she had the problem with the knee. And Leroy did all he could, but she never was any good as a 4-year-old.
Was there any greater pleasure winning that Kentucky Derby for the second time? Was it or winning the first time is something that you'll never forget?
Well, there was a thing rightfully January Risk was a player because I predicted to Leroy Jolly in November. I said, if you don't, I was riding Plug Nickel. That was the best 3-year-old that year, 2-year-old, and he became the best 3-year-old at the beginning of the year. So I told Leroy Jolly after I rode her in Acura, I said, if you don't screw this filly got a chance to win the Kentucky Derby. He said, why? I said, because she's not a horse around. They want to go as far as this filly go. The farther they go, the better she is. And so he took me off after that race. I think it was the third or fourth race she run. And put Pinkay on a filly. And she won the race. She won by the nose. The Marble Cell, I think it was. And then when I was in Florida, I wasn't mad at him because he took me off. And he took me off because I don't rode another horse for him. He got mad and took me off the horse. So and I was in Hialeah. He came one day to me because he had some problem with a filly. She trying to get out. She do some things. And he fired the exercise boy that he had before, the exercise boy that used to gallop. She know the filly, know how to handle the filly. And when they took it to Hialeah, he put another exercise boy, and he used to fire her all the time. And she don't was doing any good. So finally called me up and he said to me, I want you to ride this filly for me. I want you to go back in a filly. I said, well, I can help you out, but if you take me off this filly, I'm going to kill you. I said, that's what I told him. I said, I'm going to have to kill you, I said to me. He laughed at me, he said, he always used to call me Mr. Vasquez, Leroy. So, you know what he did? I went back and I went to work the filly, and she had the mouth all cut up. I checked her mouth, the mouth was all cut up. And I told him, I said, you got to do something for her mouth. Her mouth is all cut up. So I went to Alan Jurgen. I borrowed an overcheck bridle, and I used to gallop her with an overcheck for 10 days to let the mouth heal. And then I worked her, and she worked real nice and right next, close to the rail. And then she run in Gulf Stream. And when we got to Gulf Stream, he put the filly in and put another filly in a race and named Cordero in both fillies. So the next morning I got up, I went to the barn with a baseball bat. I want to kill him. He saw me coming. He said, oh, throw them on. He said, you're going to ride the filly. You're going to ride the filly. I said, okay. So I was mad because he named Cordero in both. So I rode that filly, and I win the race, and I said to a jock called Michael Lee, I said, this filly he's gonna win the Derby this year. He said to me, what about Plug Nickel? I said, Plug Nickel is running good, but when I get to the Derby, It's only going to be one horse running that after the stretch. Going to be genuine risk. And everything happened like you predict.
So you get Genuine Risk, obviously goes on to win the Kentucky Derby. Then you get to the Preakness. Can you explain the controversy or what happened between you and Angel Cordero Jr.?
He mugged me in the race. He should have. He drove probably the best horse because he put me outside fence and they left me there and then took off and he beat me by 4 or 5 lengths. So, when you do that, if you had a good enough horse, he never could have done that to me. I could have went by him. People claim when they go around 4 or 5 horses and get carry out, he say, "Oh, he got carry out." You got carry out because you don't got enough horse to go by. That's all. But if you got enough horse, look, Secretary, when he was in good day, he used to go around 5, 6 horses, and they looked like they was tied up to the fence. So, it's making excuses. He rode the best horse that day and beat me and got away with it. He should have been disqualified.
Speaking of Secretariat, people will say like it was one of the greatest horses or greatest performances of any horse. But didn't you defeat Secretariat 3 times, the only jockey to do that?
Yeah, I beat him with a horse in Saratoga, a $35,000 horse. It was called Onion. I catch him in a bad day. That's what can happen in business,
Right.
If you get up in the morning, a person, you say, "I don't feel good, my head hurt." Horses don't do that because they can't talk. So that day was a bad day for Secretary. So I beat him.
They can talk, we just can't understand them.
Yeah. And I know Secretary don't run inside the horses. He never could run inside horses, So that day I made sure he come inside of me. So that probably was a difference in the race.
Right. So you beat him at the Wood Memorial. Was it the Whitney Handicap? And wasn't it a maiden race and you were riding Quebec was the horse?
Yeah, I rode a horse Quebec and my horse Lunch. I was number 4 position, I think I was. And he was inside of me. I annihilated in the first jump out of the gate. Not intentionally. I had intention to crowd him, but not as bad as I did. Because my horse Lunch up in the air and he launched to the inside. And I hit Secretary and another horse, and I almost put him over the fence. So they took back out of there. They had to come around 10 horses, and he finished a 4th in the race. He run a big race.
Jacinto, listening to you is just amazing stuff. But you mentioned something about strategy. I've watched horse racing. I'm not gonna. I'm no S. I don't know a lot about it. But you talked about strategy. So when you get on the track and you're trying to keep a horse on the inside or on the outside, how do you go about putting that strategy into action?
Well, if you got enough force to do it, you can do it. I was in Onion that day. When I turned in the backside, I went to the middle of the racetrack. I know Secretary's going to come and he's going to try to go outside of me. So that day I had in my mind, if he come outside of me, he's going to have to jump the outside fence because I don't want to let him come back in around me. I was in front of him. So he dropped to the inside. When I saw him drop to the inside, I crowded him back to the inside fence. When I got to the turn over there, I had him inside and I put some little squeeze and I keep talking to Torcut and I keep him away from concentration. And when we turned for home, I had him I had a crowd pretty good. And I see Torcut hit him a couple of times and he don't respond. I said, this guy belong to me. So I just stayed with him to the last 70 yards. I turned him loose and I went on and I won the race by a length or 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
we are talking with Hall of Fame jockey Jacinto Vasquez, won the Kentucky Derby with Foolish Pleasure 50 years ago in 1975. What about the guys, Jacinto, in the other saddles? Who was the best jockey you consistently went up against back in your prime?
Well, in my prime, we had a lot of good riders, lots of good riders. You know, Shoemaker was in the crowd, and Pinkay, De La House, Velasquez, Cordero, you know, Velasquez, Cordero, they know was any better riding, those guys. And, but the best rider that I ever rode and I've watched and ride, was riding from my beginning when I came over here. I rode a race in Keeneland with Eric Carr in 1961. And I watched Eric Carr ride. Then he retired after that year, 61. In 62, he retired. And I watched Shoemaker. Shoemaker was a little guy, and he had everything. He had the hands and the head. You know, we're talking about strong riding. If you don't got the horse, don't make any difference how strong you are. They're not going to run any faster. So I think that all our riders I saw in this country, American riders, I never rode too much with Eric Carroll, but it was Shoemaker. He could really ride a horse going from behind, go to the lead, or take him back, and he know where he was all the time.
So after you retired from racing, would you ride horses just for the fun of it? And can you explain just the relationship of a rider, whether he's a jockey or just riding for pleasure and a beautiful animal like a horse?
Well, you know what? All my life, I used to get on a lot of horses in the morning. 2, 3 horses, 5 horses, 6 horses. I worked for Mr. Wiley for over close to 30 years, and Dave Wiley, and they had some nice horses. And I worked for T.J. Kelly. I rode a lot of horses for Alan Jurgen, those guys. And I had a pretty good judgment in the morning. When I work on a horse, I gallop or work a horse a couple of times, I could tell what kind of horses they are.
Here's one that's easy. I think it can be fun here. You're around the jockeys all the time, on the track, off the track. How many jockeys trash talk each other? Were you ever a trash talker, Jacinto? And if there was trash talkers, who were they? What'd they do?
Well, you know, the thing we had in my days, you know, today, these jocks, they get to the 3/8 pole and hit a horse a couple of times and don't respond. They stand up and they just gallop them home. You know, in my time, Cordero, Velasquez, all these jocks, most of we dead last or way back. We make a bet. I bet your coke that I beat you in this, and we keep riding those horses. You know, not really beating them up, but we keep riding and trying to beat each other just for fun, because we don't. When you're so far back, you don't have no chance. So we just trying to entertain my own self. And I don't see those things today with riders.
We do a segment here, a trivia segment called 50-50. I'm going to give you a 50% chance to get a question right. It's either true or false. Flip of the coin. So, true or false? They actually made a movie about Ruffian, and they actually had someone playing you in that movie.
Yes. I don't know the guy. I never met him.
But you are right. There was a movie. It was a made-for-TV movie on ABC.
Yes.
That aired in 2007. Did you ever watch the movie? Did you ever watch that movie?
No, not really. Not really, because we had a problem with the company that made the movie. They offered a miserable $5,000 for the right for the movies. And we refused for that. Mr. Wiley and myself, they refused to have anything to do with the movie.
Someone named Vladimir Diaz played you in the movie, and I don't think he was an actor. I think he was a part-time jockey.
He was a jockey. He was riding around Philadelphia. I never met the guy. Yeah.
Let me ask you, Jacinto. In the early 80s, there was a controversy. You were suspended for a year for bribery charges that you have vehemently denied to this day. But what kind of toll does it take on you to have your honor attacked like that?
Well, you know, all the crooked son of my bitches in New York, you know, they can write their own script and prosecute you with it. And I never bribe anybody. I never offer any bribe to anybody. The only thing I told Eddie Maple when I went out to the race, I ride a horse that I thought he can win. And we're supposed to go out for dinner, him and his wife and my wife. I said, Eddie, you want to make some money? Bet this son of a bitch because this horse can win today. And the turf. It was a loan shop. As a matter of fact, I win the race. I forgot. I think he paid $48 on that day. And they used that against me. I never went to no grand juries over there. The racing commission, you know, Mr. Denny Phipps, he picked a bunch of riders, and they don't prosecute the rider, nothing, everybody else, and they blame somebody else. They blame the team to Mike Venetian and me. There was fixing race over there for 3 years, and we got we was the scapegoats for that.
Well, it seems like it doesn't get you upset about it anymore.
Well, listen, I got a clean conscience. When I came back, I never lost any my customers. I had all the customers I want. Same people. I walk in the barn, I never was rejected by anything. And I wish they never to give me the license back. If they don't give me the license back, I own Hartford and Belmont, Saratoga, because I'm gonna sue and I'm gonna tell the whole stuff that was really going on in New York, because I know everything was going on. I never seen. That's why they picked me to save my ass. I took a year's suspension, but I got a clear conscience that I don't have nothing to hide to anybody. I get accused a lot because, listen, when you're smart in this business, you're crook. They think you're crook when you're smart. When you're dumb, they say, oh, he's a good rider, but he's a dummy. No, when you're a smart rider, they say, oh, he's a smart rider, but he's a crook. That's what they tell them. You know, take a for instance, I'm going to tell you right now in the air. Pep Venezuela, he should be in the Hall of Fame. All the things that they run, you got a bunch of hop-headers in the Hall of Fame. A bunch of hop-headers. A lot of other riders, they had problems in their life. And then they got them in the Hall of Fame, and those guys like Pep Day, they don't want them in the Hall of Fame. They don't want a guy like Milo Valenzuela. Before I fought for that guy for many years because they say he was a drunk. He used to ride drunk better than other riders are riding today. And that's a problem with a racer. You can't win around the racetrack. You know how they are. The newspapers write what they want.
You can certainly hear the fire in this Hall of Fame jockey, Jacinto Vasquez. In 26 career starts, Foolish Pleasure finished out of the money just 3 times. He won 16 times in those 26 starts, including the 75 Kentucky Derby with this Hall of Fame jockey, Jacinto Vasquez, in the saddle. Thanks for talking with us today about that great ride back in 75, Mr. Vasquez.
All right, thank you.
One of the sport's all-time greats, Jacinto Vasquez, on the Past Our Prime podcast. Time to talk some Padres baseball, which in 1975 was practically unheard of. After 102 losses in 1974, the Friars are 10-5 to start the season, led by a big-time stud outfielder by the name of Dave Winfield. In his second full season in the bigs, Winfield was still figuring it out, but his manager, John McNamara, thinks he's a potential superstar. Took a while, but Johnny Mac was right. He became a 12-time All-Star and a Hall of Famer when it was all said and done. Had some great years, in New York,
Everywhere.
even though he never won it all in New York, but really blossomed as a Yankee. And then the Blue Jays, I think he was a big guy on those Blue Jays.
He had a good year with the Angels one year.
I was just going to say, Billy had some good years with the Angels.
He did, and they just let him go.
Yeah. He was,
Man, that's what they do. you know.
He was a super athlete, man. He could have played football, basketball. I think he was
Wasn't he all
drafted by the
drafted by
Cowboys.
three of those? Wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Went to University of Minnesota
Yeah.
and played, I want to say, with Kevin McHale there. And yeah, I think was drafted by the NBA, the NFL, and obviously Major League Baseball. So yeah, just a great, great, talented player. Big guy. All right. Their way to get up is to get upset. The Bulls and Warriors are going at it in the Western Conference Finals. Bulls lead the series 2-1 after the sensational Rick Barry, a past guest of ours, had a mental mistake at the end of Game 3 that cost Golden State. Bill, what did he do?
Well, okay. Warriors lead 89-88. It's late in the game. Bulls have the ball, but a turnover, 22 seconds left, puts the ball in Barry's hands. So all he has to do is just play keep away. Don't let the other team get it. Don't let the Bulls get it. They win. Shockingly, though, Barry lost track of time remaining, tried a wild double pump with a triple twist shot. And when it missed with 10 seconds to go, Chicago had the ball again. 8 seconds later, Norm Van Leer zipped a pass to center Tom Borwinkle, who was free for the lay-in, and that was the game.
In the East, it's the Bullets and the Celtics. And Mark, after 2 games, both Washington wins. The storyline is that the defending champs, the Celtics, they just can't make a shot.
Yeah, which is funny because, no wonder they couldn't win the series. I mean, you would figure, you know what? The NBA, as much as it changes, it hasn't changed because you watch the NBA today. And what was I saw a stat like on the Timberwolves, like on threes, were like 7 for 40 in a game,
7 for 47.
But here but during these days, people didn't shoot threes because there was no 3-point shot. The mid-range game you lived by. That's why stats can be so misleading because, if you miss a lot of shots, but you get your own rebound, let's say you dominate the boards, then you're still going to win that game. But you know what's so interesting about these 2 series is that they were really competitive series. And even though, Golden State ends up playing, the Washington Bullets in the finals, it could just have easily been the Celtics and Bulls in the finals that year.
Yeah.
And the Bulls had a guard in that team named Jerry Sloan, who was a very decent, good basketball player, but he became an even better coach, Hall of Fame coach.
Yep.
All those Utah Jazz teams.
Jazz teams, exactly. Lucky Devil, he found heaven. One of my all-time favorite announcers, Bill King. He did the Warriors, he did the Raiders, and he did the A's. My 3 teams, and he was sensational. I don't remember him much doing hoops. Some say that was what he was best at, but he was great at football and baseball. He did the Raiders. Even when the Raiders came down here to L.A., he would come down to they were basically all road games for him. He loved the ballet and the opera. He was into Russian history. So he was smart and pretty eccentric dude. He would never pay more than $200 for a car. He'd buy the car and he would drive it until it broke down, and then he would just leave it on the side of the road and go buy another one. So did not care about cars. His famous catchphrase was "Holy Toledo." I mean, I could go on and on about Bill King. The best thing about Bill King for me is I became an A's fan after their dynasty. They were horrible in like 77, 78, 79. In 80, they hired Billy Martin. And in 81, the A's, Philly was so cheap, they didn't have the team on the radio station going into years. They would be broadcast by college students.
Oh,
He
wow.
stopped paying people, and it was embarrassing. You had 3,000 people in the stands, no radio contract. So finally, Finley sells the team to the Haas family that owned Levi's. And one of the first things they did was they hired Bill King and Lon Simmons, 2 Hall of Fame announcers. And instantly, the A's had credibility again. And it was due to the fact that they hired those guys. Now, their play on the field with Martin at the helm and Ricky Henderson coming up helped. But as a 13-year-old, I finally remember finally like a real team, But get this, in the late 40s, he was in Peoria, Illinois doing Bradley basketball. Who else was announcing those games with him?
Chick Hearn.
Yep.
Chick Hearn. How about that for a pair? And Chick used to say that the only guy who was as good as him at basketball was Bill King.
And
So
what I love about Bill King was his mustache, where he's got it like, curled up. So he
Yep.
looks actually like the devil.
Yes.
Really freaky.
But they said that the one thing, the lady there, some lady ran into him and said he looked like Satan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said, "That's great. I'll see you soon."
Yes.
Maybe that's what the A's got so good. They sold their soul to the devil.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they haven't won a World Series in 35 years, so I need a receipt on that. Hey, next week, AJ Foyt is on the cover of SI as he goes for his 4th Indianapolis 500 win. And they had a little pictorial on this in this issue leading up to that, Bill.
Yeah, they did. They said back in 1975, the Indianapolis 500 was the largest single event in American sport, with roughly 300,000 spectators on hand and 1 million people watching, or more than 1 million. Then I looked that up. I thought, wonder if that's that way nowadays. Well, from roadtrips.com in 2025, the single event or sporting event, the World Cup draws 5 billion. Tour de France is 3.5 billion, and the Cricket World Cup is 2.6 billion. Yeah. Coming back to this country, the Super Bowl is the #1 largest event now, single event.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's because I always, to me, always the Indianapolis 500. I didn't watch, but it was a whole weekend. You knew about it, like we talked about with a guest coming up. We knew all the racers and we knew everything about it. But still, it's sort of gone down a little bit, which is surprising because I always thought those fans would just keep getting more and more as time went on.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, actually. It's kind of sad. Man on a Tightrope, Ron LaFleur. I remember the made-for-TV movie on this Tigers outfielder played by LeVar Burton of Roots fame. Mark, you've mentioned many times the 75 season for the Tigers, not the best one for your Motown boys, but the LaFleur story was a great one.
No, he was LaFleur, and he would be an all-star with the Tigers, and then later with the Montreal Expos. Yeah, I mean, LaFleur was one of the guys that gave you, as a Tiger fan, something to root for, especially in 75 when we were so bad. That 19-game losing streak that summer and stuff. But Ron was one of my favorite players. I liked him a lot, and his career wasn't that long with the Tigers, actually.
Well, it was me too. He was one of the reasons. Him and Mark Fidrich. I loved Ron LaFleur.
Yeah,
right. And Fidrich didn't come up.
I never knew that he went to prison till later on in my baseball time. But I just, he went to the state prison of Southern Michigan. Damn.
Right, and in the movie, Billy Martin's the one that discovers him in prison and stuff, which is true. But he ended up, but then Billy got fired, and it was Ralph Houck that he played for.
Yep. A television announcer once introduced him as a man who had gone from stealing cars to stealing bases. LaFleur winced. I never stole cars. I forget what he did. He was a young kid, some sort of
armed robbery. He was sentenced to 5 to 15 years for armed robbery.
Yeah.
But they said in prison he'd seen fights, spent several months in solitary, and saw a man murdered by a rival over a third inmate's affections.
Right. And like I say, when he was in solitary confinement, he started doing all those push-ups and stuff. He got real buff.
So had a couple, all-star seasons with the Tigers. Then in 1980, stole 97 bases.
Yeah.
He was a legit base stealer. 1982, he hits 287 in 91 games for the White Sox, and yet the next spring training, he doesn't make the team. He retires. That was it. Left the game as fast as he came into it, which was LaFleur, right? Doing things quickly seems kind of like his thing. So not a lengthy career. Actually, I think at post-retirement, he announced that he was actually 4 years older than he actually was, but still was productive. I mean, usually when you look at like guys last seasons, they're hitting 202 or something. He hit 287. You would have thought he could have still been playing, but
he'd be an all-star today with a 287 batting average.
Right? He would be.
Yeah. Hey, Billy, what else in baseball going on that week?
I'm going to go to the NL East. The Cubs won 3 of 5 to maintain baseball's best record, but they had to make a trade. So they traded Bert Hooton to the Dodgers for Jeff Zahn and Eddie Solomon. Hooton was 0-2 with the Cubs. He went 18-5, finished 18-5 with the Dodgers. He would go on to win 112 games with the Dodgers and pitch in 3 World Series. Zahn and Solomon would win a total of 2 games for the Cubs, but as the Angels always have to come into play here, Zahn would win 52 career games for the Angels. So the Cubs make a deal, the Dodgers, as usual, benefit.
Yeah, yeah. Happy
Yeah.
was Hooten's nickname. Finished second in the Cy Young voting in '78. He was a pretty dependable guy on those
Yep.
Dodger teams of the late
Yep.
'70s.
Sometimes you just need to change the setting. That's all you need.
That's true.
That's what I need.
From us.
What about Pete Rose, Billy?
Pete Rose, the looking for a lineup to challenge the Dodgers. The Reds moved Pete Rose from left field to what I remember when I first started watching the Reds to third base, a position he last occupied in 1966.
Wow.
Yeah, because Rose to me was always the Reds' first baseman, the Phillies' first baseman, but the Reds' third baseman.
Right. So that infield then becomes Rose at third, Concepcion at short, Morgan at second, Perez at first, Bench at behind.
Oh.
That's some infield.
Damn, man.
And you
Man.
haven't even gotten to the outfield.
I know that.
Right, right. Now, so when he moved to left, was that to make room for Foster?
It possibly could have been.
Right. So Foster, Geronimo, and a young
Griffey.
Griffey. Whew.
Griffey.
Damn. And then you had what? Didn't that Ed Armbrister played a little bit, and Dan Dreesen?
Yeah, and Dreesen was playing third for a little
Yeah,
while.
I think so. Yeah.
World Team Tennis, the WFL, the WA, the WHA, none of those leagues survived. Neither did the World Team Tennis League. Not because they didn't try, Billy. They tried different looking courts. They tried moving teams around. They tried having tournaments. But the one thing they did do that was ahead of its time and still a part of tennis now is what they do with the balls.
They made them yellow. They used to be black or white in color, depending on the background colors of the courts. But in '72, a little bit before they introduced yellow tennis balls, it took off. And everyone started to say, hey, these balls are pretty good. Well, that was except Wimbledon, which didn't start using yellow balls until 1986. They always used the traditional white ball. So something good came out of that league.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how's about that? The aforementioned WHA is being dominated once again by 47-year-old Gordie Howe. He was the MVP of the league, guided Houston to the championship in '74. They're looking to defend it again in '75. And Bill, I don't see anyone getting in the way of this old dude and his boys.
No, they Norm Ferguson tried though. 29-year-old Norm Ferguson went into the corner with the, as you said, 47-year-old Gordie Howe. Soon after that little tussle, he had to leave the game or leave the ice for facial repairs. Damn.
Yeah, you would think by then you'd be like, I'm good. I know. Just hit me and get it over with. Those Howes did go on to defend their title and win again in Houston. So
We'll come back.
Lacrosse, Mark, what the hell?
Well, lacrosse, John Hopkins in Baltimore, great medical school and hospital there. But they are in the 70s and on, they were like the UCLA of lacrosse, just dominated. They won 35 titles in the pre-NCAA era. Then they won 9 championships, 74, 78, 79, 80, all the way up to 2007. They were runner-up 9 other times, and they made 29 Final Fours. I mean, they're just a dominant team.
Yeah. And one of the weird things is it's named after a guy, and his name is Johns, not John, Johns. And his last name is Hopkins. So I always, whenever I hear that, I'm like, it should be John Hopkins.
But it's Johns
Hopkins. And then it should be like possessive, but it's not even that. So don't get me started. On his mark and going, not Mark Hoffman, but Mark McCormick, a lawyer and sports agent. He would go on to represent, among others, Pele, Barkley, Monica Seles, Derek Jeter, and Tiger Woods, while coordinating special projects for people such as Mikhail Gorbachev and Pope John Paul II. Wow. Mm-hmm. He was the founder and chairman of International Management Group, now known as IMG. Golf Magazine called him the most powerful man in golf. The best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life was meeting Mark McCormick, says Gary Player. All the material success I've had, I owe to him. He has got me the best contracts, the most lucrative deals. But for Mark, I'd have just been peanuts. Tennis Magazine called him the most powerful man in tennis. And in this article, Sports Illustrated called him the most powerful man in all of sports. He died in 2003 at the age of 72. He was worth around $1 billion at that time, basically one of the first agents, and he had his pick of the litter almost. But Mark, he had some guys that he passed on that were kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah. And he passed on for weird reasons. Well, first of all, he invented sports marketing. So he had a playbook that he went by there. So with all the people that he had, I mean, the list of people that he didn't take for whatever reason, Wilt Chamberlain, he said it's hard to relate to someone who's 7 feet, Bobby Fischer, I guess, just because, chess and stuff. Mickey Mantle, his financial affairs, part ownership in a bowling alley were total disasters. Mark Spitz, he thought our 25% fee was too high. He goes, I wasn't in Tehran at the time, which is kind of interesting because back then Tehran was like, hey, that's a LA's sister city. Well, you fly around all the time. But I mean, Willie Mays, he said, because he came around too late in his career. There's just really interesting reasons for stuff that, why certain clients he didn't take. Oh, and Muhammad Ali. That was probably the biggest. He turned on Muhammad Ali and he turned down Joe Namath.
Imagine turning down Muhammad Ali, and I don't know what year. I think it was like 1970.
Well, he was Cassius Clay, he said at the time.
Okay, so even
earlier.
earlier.
It had nothing to do. It was more of his image. He wasn't the kind of guy at that time he thought that like a Singer sewing machine would sign him up. And the same went to Joe Namath when he first came up.
Maybe, well, Namath went on to have a whole bunch of commercials. He's more famous for his commercials.
But we all think of the late 60s Joe Namath, not the mid 60s Joe Namath when he first came up.
And then to pass on Ali, maybe the most telegenic person of that generation. So wow. But he seemed to do all right for himself, that's for sure.
Yep.
For the record, Billy.
For the record, the NBA named former Postmaster General Lawrence O'Brien as commissioner of the NBA. They named their new commissioner. He's not just a postmaster, he's also a general.
Yeah, and you win the NBA title. What do you get?
The Lawrence O'Brien Trophy.
That's right. Mark.
Yeah, Sonny Jurgensen, quarterback Sonny Jurgensen is retiring at the age of 40 after 18 years in the league. He began with the Philadelphia Eagles, won an NFL championship, not a Super Bowl. They didn't have him then, in 1960 with the Eagles. And then he ended up with the Washington Redskins and played many years for them. And I remember when he was with the Redskins, he would always split time with Billy Kilmer towards the end, I remember.
Yep.
But he had a really, really fantastic career.
Yeah. When he retired, only Unitas and Fran Tarkenton had thrown more than his 32,224 yards at the time of his calling it quits. Now, 50 years later, he's 49th. And this past year, Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes both passed him. So he played in a different era. Back then, that was considered an insane amount of yards thrown. Now that's about half of a good quarterback's career. So bases in the crowd. Mark.
Otis Foster, junior first baseman for High Point, North Carolina College. He set school records by hitting in 26 straight games. He was batting .488 with 64 RBIs, 23 homers. So he is like one of High Point's like all-time great players. And he has his name on the fence at their stadium. Yeah, he set like 9 school records in 3 years from 73 to 75. He's in their Hall of Fame. And he was the only black player on the team at the time, too. He was drafted by the Red Sox, played 5 years in their minor league system, but never, made it in the majors.
It's guys like him that are perfect for this part of the magazine. Faces the crowd,
exactly.
Dominant player, kind of peaked at that level, and nothing wrong with that at all. Billy.
Okay, Jeff Rowland. He's a Utah swimmer. He's the Utes' first ever NCAA swimming champion. He won the title in the 100 fly. He also remains Utah's only national champion to this day, back in 1975.
And Billy, I love this. We're going to end on the 19th hole. Take us home.
Okay. This from Paul Dunn. He says, what was George Foreman trying to prove? Who cares if he took on 5 opponents at one time? I do that every time my wife's relatives come over unexpectedly.
It's the old mother-in-law kind of joke.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it hits a little too close to home, huh, Bill?
That's just a bit.
Hey, Jacinto Vasquez won the Kentucky Derby in 1980 with genuine risk, but he won it for the first time aboard Foolish Pleasure, and that was 50 years ago in May of 75. And we thank him once again for reliving that great moment as well as many others in his Hall of Fame career as a jockey. That's it. We're done. Next week, Bill, the Indy 500, what's on tap?
We're going to talk to Scott Gager. He's a guy that's been working at the Indianapolis 500 for, gosh, what would I say, 50 years. He knows everything, the ins, the outs, the drivers, the fun stories. He's got it all. It's A.J. Foyt on the cover, but Scott Gager's going to jump up to the master seat there.
You're going to like him, I guarantee it. Until then, for Bill, for Mark, I'm Scott. We are past our prime.
See ya.
Hey.